Welcome to episode 3 of League of DFS. My name is Chris Chung, and I am back again to break down day 3 of the mid-season's invitational. And before we get there, I'll do a little quick announcement. As you can see, I did a quick change to my Twitch TV address. I've given the wrong one out, and so maybe if you go visit, you won't find this video there. And if you've seen this video, you're probably on YouTube anyway, so I don't know why I'm uploading on Twitch, as I don't even stream games. In any case, welcome back. How was your day 2 of the mid-season's invitational? It was quite predictable, and for the most part, we kind of sort of expected Kaboom to do more than what they show up. They kind of embarrassed themselves all over again, and I'll go on a rant for that later. But for the most part, the favorites stayed the favorite, and the underdog is the one you want to pick on. And for the second day in a row, we have the bottom team being a very favorable team to play against, regardless of who they're matching up against. In day 1, it was Ascension, and they are just crap over themselves. On day 2, it was Pentagram. So both of these Chinese teams, Asian teams, they're from Japan, not Chinese. I can't believe that I really dishonored my own heritage there. But anyways, the Japan teams are terrible, to let's say the least. And on the international stage, they did nothing to show for as to why they belong. But these play-in stage are just for that, to show the world whether you belong or not. So, in today's agenda, in hopes of continuing to improve my show, I'm taking all the feedback in, and I'm trying to just do better each time, all the way leading up to the summer split. Perhaps I'll do some of the Rift Rivals, which we'll talk about that later on. But leading up to the summer split, I hope to have everything clear. I hope the voice is coming better now. I put the mic closer to me. I made sure that there's no echo with the double sound, and hopefully everything will run smoothly. So first things first, the first thing we'll talk about was today's matchup, and I'll try to go over what I did and kind of give you a feel of why I said the things I said last night, and hopefully help you build more towards tomorrow's slate. Then we're going to talk a little bit about further basics of League of Legends, what's something that you can pay attention to, and also I'll give you some podcast suggestions to listen to that can help you improve your preparation, and also ways you can do to save time in preparing for this DFS game, which I still find fascinated about. And finally, we'll just break down tomorrow's slate. So first things first, I can't bleep this out, but what the hell, Kaboom. The draft, and this might tie into the basics, the draft is a very powerful part of the teams. And if a team has a bad draft, they'll eventually have a bad game. And we saw that with Kaboom. If you watch their last game, they took on the weirdest composition, and it had it made zero sense, and that's why they got their ass whooped. There's nothing else I can say about that. They just flat out embarrassed themselves. Now, I know for the beginners, for those who don't really follow eSports that much, these drafts may not make sense yet, but you'll eventually learn this and incorporate this into your process of building a lineup, because teams have a tendency, you can tell that they lean towards certain champions, and certain champions are patch related. Certain patches made certain champions stronger, and certain compositions make sense. Whether you're an early comp kind of team, which a good example of that is Team Vitality of EU, where they dominate the early game phase and they dominate the mid game phase, and they go for the win. Or you are a late game scaling. This is another term that you'll need to learn, a late game scaling composition, which teams will try to slow down the game. They may give up some early towers, early turrets, early objectives, but later on their champions grow stronger as the game goes on, and they dominate the mid game and they dominate the end game. Certain teams match up better than others, but for the most part, you want a team that really just comes together well. So ignore the telephone. I don't know why my mic is picking it up. Any case, I don't know what Kaboom did in that last game. They pick out champions that are that make no sense. They pick out champions that have no synergy with one another, and that's why they subsequently get whooped. Now, why does the draft matter for those who are in DFS? Now, if you are just like John George, the my buddy that I always mention, he actually does break down the percentages of champions that a certain team selects, who they're geared towards, what are their comfort picks, and if you can figure that out, you will figure out which team might have the edge. Unfortunately for Kaboom, they went against their own usual way of drafting. They went against logic, and you can tell I am still tilted about that. But nonetheless, the drafts, you can pay attention to that on your own. There's information out there on LLEsports.com. There's information on leaguepedia.com. So those are some of the resources that you can just go in there and figure out what your team's favorite champions is that they select and if they match up well against their opponent. That's kind of next level stuff, but I'm throwing this out there so you can begin thinking about how you can do better preparations for DFS. Okay, so another thing I like to talk about is patches. In last episode I talked about the patches and why they make a difference. So today I learned on the Euphoria podcast. So that's something you want to look up to. That's very catered more towards the EU LCS crowd, but they give out some strong information as well. The Euphoria podcast, they mentioned that the MSI will be played on patch 8.8. I'm not sure if they're gonna go towards 8.9. Much like every 2 weeks it will change, but I'm unsure. But for now we know it's 8.8, meaning they called it Conqueror on the podcast, and I've tweeted this out earlier today. Basically, what that means is to top position now. Less teams will try to be tanky, and they'll pick more of the a high damage kind of champions. You'll see a Camille, you'll see Irelia, just like today, and you'll see more Fiora and Gangplank kind of plays into the top. What does that mean? Well, that means the top position might actually gain a little bit more value, because now those champions, the top position where they traditionally they were damage absorbers, are now going to be involved in team fights, are going to be involved in one-on-one fights. They will try to rack up kills and assists. So for the good teams, for the teams that you want to win, you might think about prioritizing the top position a little bit more, and that eventually does mean that you will have to de-emphasize another position. Which one that is, I am not entirely sure yet, but if my best guess right now, looking at some of the early stats, indicates that the mid the mid position is suffering a little bit in terms of stats. We might also see support being the alternate tank now, so they might see a little bit less stats. So, and stats are all we care about for DFS. Now that might not be true for certain teams, because in these games, as I saw some supports having more kills than their mid, which is outrageous, crazy, and I don't know. But in any case, the top might gain a little bit more value, so you might want to prioritize just a little bit. Don't shift too much. You still want your AD carry, you still want your mid position to be your priorities. But in case you need to debate between player A or B that will make the salary work, you might want to lean more towards the top. So this is my best guess right now. So the position that suffers a little bit is the mid. Okay, so that's patch things note related, something that you can use and apply right away. Okay, so let's review what happened this morning today. For the first slate, I think I did well. I managed to recuperate some of my losses from day 1 and day 2. I managed to put together a solid team, just bouncing off ideas with some of the people that I know. And I think, John, you might want to correct me or not. I think I might have beaten you with this lineup here, the second one, where you see 156. I think I've beaten you by a couple of points. Unfortunately, this lineup I put into a free roll. Damn it. Always my best lineup seems to always find its way to one that I cannot profit from. But That's water under the bridge. 150 something is on the higher end of the scores, and I was able to take down a lot of the double ups. In match number 2, um, you can see that I tried to take a chance with Pentagram. This one in the second slate, I was going full YOLO, thinking, if I go against my process, I might be get lucky sometimes because everything is crapshoot at that point. I'm tilting, as you can tell from day one. So that ended up being pretty much what you expected. It was pure crap. The lineup was terrible, Pentagram was terrible, and I mixed in the other losing team too. So this one was a dead last lineup. I didn't cash in this GPP, but thanks goodness I only threw that in a single GPP. My cash game, I cashed again. This looks good. I managed to pick a stack of Dire Wolves and Supermassive. Yeah, both teams who won the day. I don't know that I have the highest score on this slate. Let me check. Well, I can't even tell if I were able to hit GPP or not, but for cash at least, I know that I was top scorer for that. So I'm pretty pleased with this process. I might have guessed a little bit with Dire Wolves, but no, I'm sorry. Dire Wolves was playing against Pentagram, so yeah, that was a natural way to go. And of course, I picked the favorite according to Vegas, and that was Supermassive and Dire Wolves together. Massive score. I think this was one of the ones that I would have hit top 5 or if not top 3 in GPPs. Okay, looking at the last slate, this is where a lot of I hit the fan with Kaboom. I'm still tilting about their drafts, as you can tell. We even have a negative score because I mixed in 2 Kabooms with 2 Supermassive, and then I fully stacked Dire Wolves. What I should have done was lean more towards Dire Wolves, getting maybe 5 Dire Wolves, and just go Supermassive with 1 punt somewhere. Even a Pentagram punt would have been better than the piece of crap that Kaboom showed up. But in any case, this lineup was this score was good enough, I think, for cash. But unfortunately I put this one in my cash lineup, and that was not a good score. That score, I was right outside the cash. I bubbled out. These are some of my saving graces, but it really, at the end of the day, it didn't matter for me because my cash game, I usually typically enter more cash than I do GPP anyways. So it didn't offset some of the losses in this third slate. Overall, all 3 slates combined, I did manage to profit a little bit. Again, trying to recoup all the losses that I incurred in day 2. Okay, so that's enough for reviewing. So let us look ahead into tomorrow's slate. We're going back to Group A. So for the 4 a.m., guys, remember it's 4 a.m., so you might want to set your lineup right after this video or earlier, just before tomorrow, because probably you'll be asleep. This is 4 a.m. Eastern time. For the Pacific crowd, you might just be heading to bed as the game is starting. So 4 a.m. is going to start. We have the Group A again. We're going back to Gambit eSports. We're going back to Ascension. We're going back to Rainbow 7, and we're going back to Chaos Land Gamer. Okay, we have some stats to help us guide us, but of course, naturally, these are very just small sample sizes and nothing can be relied on. What I typically do in this case, I still look at the stats and then I compare them to their how they finished their spring and see how close they are. And if they're close enough, then I can just take that as a baseline and consider that as their floor kind of score. So that this is a good, well, I consider this a good process for cash if you want to pick the highest scoring player by their dollar value. In the first slate, I'll go through each of the 3 slates tonight since we have time. But my global idea, my overall general thought is that you want to play every single team that is playing against Ascension. Ascension has given up at least 20 kills or 20 deaths in all 3 of the games that they played in the first stage. I don't know if they have time to get better at this time. Maybe they won't have such a bad showing, but it's still the team that you want to beat up on and stack as many players as you want to go against them. For GPP, go all full 5-player, so 4 players plus a team, and go against Ascension. For cash, you might want to hedge a little bit, but I'm pretty confident that you just want to beat up on Ascension. Later on, I'll talk about some things that is confusing me and making me take a pause and having to not go gung ho about just beating up on Ascension. Okay, the other team that have similar types of giving up similar types of death, surprisingly, is R7. They gave up the second most of that Group A, and that is surprising to me because they are still going to be counted on as the most expensive team of the slate. And they're still good, I guess. I don't know if they're very good on international stage, but Bovada or any betting sites that you see, Rainbow Seven is still a favorite in most games unless they face off against Gambit, which that's where they crapped the bed last time. So if we consider them the fave, you might want to just use 3 or 4 of them in your stack and just play around them and be careful. I mean, I can't completely trust that. Chaos Land Gamer surprisingly had a good strong day one. The betters are not as confident that they're repeating their success of day one. But this is where you can, for GPP, for tournaments, you might think about just loading up on some chaos and with Gambit for the most part, because both teams have showed a good showing. The caveat here is that ownership will be flooding towards Gambit Gaming, I expect, and more towards Chaos Land Gamer. So if you want to make a contrarian lineup, you might pivot off maybe 1 or 2 of the players, and instead of considering, say, a Chaos, you might go Rainbow 7, which I think the Gambit and Rainbow 7 stack will be lower owned than a Gambit Chaos Land Gamer stack, for example. Okay, and that is kind of where I'm thinking of going if I want to play the GPP. So let's go slate by slate. The first slate, Rainbow 7 will be facing off Chaos Land Gamer, Gambit Esports against Ascension, and Chaos Land Gamer. So the prices are, this is how they're distributed. There is a slightly wider gap between the second and third teams. So that's how all the players are going to be sorted. Makes sense. But for cash, I'm going full Gambit here and go 5 Gambit and then try to fill in the other spots. If I want to follow the cash game, I would probably try to fit in some Rainbow 7. But I'm not afraid of using Chaos because Chaos did beat R7 in day 1. Yeah. So, and R7 didn't have that great of a showing. So that's what I consider for GPP. Okay, so let's see if what we can build for day 1. I'm gonna put Gambit in there first. This is not as important to do so because it's a team and a best of 1. So looking at the top and looking at the stats that are available, PvP Stakos is the best top laner as far as stat wise. He has the most assists, the lowest death, not as high in kills. If I want to save some money, thinking about savings, I might play Nate, for example. His stats doesn't look bad either. He has a lot more kills, a low on assist, but cost saving. Okay, so if I'm building a cash, okay, let's go back to that. If I'm building a cash, let's stick with a more safe kind of line. The other one I'm kind of thinking about might not be as safe. Okay, Diamond Prox is the best of the jungler, if I'm not mistaken. And Intreso is actually a good savings, but he is on the losing team, so I'm not going to consider him at all for this slate. Let us see what happens when we put Audi. And then I want Kira. Actually, Kira might not even be one of the better ones. No. We'll put Seiya in there. We'll take Audi out. Put Diamond Prox. And then we have Lodic. Edward. Probably go with Genthix. And we have about 5,700 left over, which is more than enough to play one of the lower tier players. We have an Ascension, we have Nate, we have Tierwolf. I think I'll go with Nate. Okay. So this is what my cash lineup is going to look like if I think R7 is going to win, which I do. At this point, I will have no reason to doubt Vegas. You know, Vegas in long term are going to win, but if you look at it into like per slate, they might not be the one to win. If you want to just say screw Vegas, I want to win the GPP, just throw out any, just replace all the R7s with Chaos Land Gamers, and you'll actually have a pretty good lineup to fill in versus two teams. So this is what I'll do. This is what I'll save for my cash game. Okay, so let's look at slate number 2, which starts at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. We have Rainbow 7 again at the top, Gambit, Chaos, and Ascension, and again, they are sorted by that kind of salary, but now the salary is much tighter. We see a 5,300 for Rainbow 7, 5,200 for Gambit. So you're not getting much of a saving if you're going down from Rainbow 7 to Gambit Sports, but you get a massive saving if you go from the second to the third. And also there's a little saving going from like Chaos to Ascension, which means that the salary might be a little looser than I imagine. Well, let's see. Let's build for the second slate. If I'm going cash game, what does the betting odds tell me? Betting odds tell me that R7 is a favorite and Gambit is a favorite. So this is a time where we try to fit in both favorites. It's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard because, again, two favorites. What I'm thinking, because with the tight salary, you might actually end up with two punt option, which is not very appealing in my opinion. What I'll do, since Ascension does play aggressive and they did manage to put in some score against Rainbow 7, I think I'm going to punt with Ascension. Insert those punts with Ascension and then try to fill in as many R7s and Gambit Gaming. Okay, we'll go with Stejos again. This time I'll go with Audi, Kira, and Lodic. Okay, it's not letting us have too much to play around with. Okay, so what? Maybe starting here, I'll try to consider making some changes. I'm taking Ascension team out and maybe putting an Ascension ADC in there or a mid. Lloyd, which could be Lloyd. Let me see what my statistics say. G4 actually has a better chance of putting a higher assist score, although then not by much. Oh, okay, maybe their jungler Intreso might work because it's one of the focal points of the team. Intreso, which leaves us with 5,700. We actually might be able to. The salary might not be as tight as I initially thought. So let's see if I take out this one and put in Edward. 5,200, which leave us with the bottom of the pile to select between Chaos Land Gamer and Rich. 2 support is not ideal. Let me see what I can do if I take out him, put in Rich, and then we have 6,100 left. So Chaos Land Gamer, Nate's, Genthix. I think you still want to go towards Genthix. What do we have here? We have 2 GMB, 3 R7, 4 R7s actually. 2 ascensions, and let me see if I can fit in something slow. If I fit in slow, take out intricacies, 5700 left, and go with Edward for support. So I have 3 supports, 1 punt. This might be the cash game that I'm going with, the 3 supports, because it has most of the favorites and just 1 punt. It's not ideal, again, to have this multiple supports for a cash build, but in this case, there were 2 clear favorites in this slate. So I will go with this one for my cash game. Okay, so let's look at the last one. This one is a headache. Ascension Gaming is actually priced as the most expensive out of this. I don't understand what's happening here. There is no money line that supports this stance of why Ascension is higher than Chaos Latin Gamer. And we've seen Chaos having success against Rainbow Seven. They had success against Ascension before. So I'm not entirely sure what DK was thinking. The reason why I am actually hesitating is because in the past, when I thought that I got DK figured out that they did a stupid mispricing, actually DK actually knew something that Vegas bettors did not, or bettors in general did not. So this is giving me a lot of pause to think about how I'm going to build the most optimal lineup. If I get this correct, if my logic tells me I should be stacking Gambit, I should be stacking Chaos, it'll leave at least 1,200 salaries unused. And throughout all my experience, I have yet to win a slate or win a lineup, any contest, with that much money left over. So heart versus head, I don't know. I think I'm still going to go with Gambit and Chaos as my primary build for cash, and then I'll throw an Ascension kind of stack into a GPP just to make myself feel sane. So let's see how this build will look like. If I go, since I think Chaos will actually beat Ascension, and that's where most of the stats will come from, so I'll have a bit more I'll have a bit more Chaos in my build. Diamond procs. Let's go with, see, with this build, with this build I can actually have 4 carries, which I'm not entirely sure if I want the 4 carries, because in the past it has shown that it does not work. But since I have the flexibility, I mean, not that it has not worked, but Kira hasn't actually lived up to his status. But what can I really do about that? Slow or Edward. Edward actually has more assists in the past 3 games, and then I'll just load up on, the mid and ADC. Oh. Kira. Okay. And of course, see, we have a 1900 unused. I don't know what to do. See, statistics say, when my eyes tell me this is the way to build the lineup, this is what the betting odds say, this is what the money line says I should do. I don't know. So take a chance, fade this slate, and not worry about it. Either way, I'm fine with it. I think if you are not as hardcore, if you're just testing out the waters, this is a fine slate to fade. But this is where the Vegas stats, my eyes, these are all the places that's telling me where to go. All right, so that's my idea of how to build the lineups. Let me know your thoughts about them. Hopefully, you'll be able to cash if you decide to play this slate. And if you have any more questions on how to prepare for League of Legends DFS, hit me up. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on the YouTube channels. You can find me on Twitch channels, and you can. My email is down at the bottom of this show. So thank you all for joining me again. Let me know how I can continue to help you, and let us know how you might want to enjoy League of Legends more. All right, peace out.